Teaching Corner. Today I wanted to talk to you about an SLP, or speech language pathologist. What exactly is that, and what exactly do they do with our students? Well, SLP is a medically aligned field that requires a master's or a doctorate in order to practice. And they will work with patients from babies all the way up to geriatrics, but of course we're going to focus on students because we're either parents or teachers of students. So they can work in a variety of other settings like in hospitals, but we're going to talk about them working in schools or private setting. So if an SLP works for the school, then there's two different ways that can happen. They can be hired by the school system itself, and then they have just like a teacher, they would have a contract that they would sign with the school system, or they can be contract. So a lot of times in a rural area, if your school system doesn't have enough students for an entire caseload, or if they're having trouble hiring someone through the school system, they can contract through another agency, and the speech language pathologist then actually works for that agency and is paid through that agency, but they're contracted through the school. The other way that you can have an SLP is through private practice, and I'll put a link down below to a video I did on the difference between public versus private therapy. But if it's in a private practice, then oftentimes you will either go to their private practice, or sometimes they will come into your home. Now some of them even do it via telehealth. But they have their own practice and work with a variety of students for a variety of different reasons. So if your student doesn't qualify through the public school system, and I'll put a link down below to a video I did on that as well, but if your student doesn't qualify but still is having some articulation errors or having trouble, you may want to then seek out the private route. So typically when we think of SLPs, or speech language pathologists, we think of the speech part. We think of articulation errors, like a student who is mixing up the th sound with the f sound. And so we think of them working with that. But speech language pathologists do a variety of other things, including working with students who have voice issues. They work with students that have swallowing disorders. I'll never forget one time I was working at a school and the SLP showed up and was watching a student eat. And I was like, what is she doing? They're supposed to be doing speech. And she was like, oh no, she has a swallowing disorder. So she was making sure that she was eating correctly and that the food was going down the way it was supposed to. But another main focus for SLP is the language issue. So speech language pathologists also work with students that have speech and language issues. They could have issues with fluency, they could have issues with literacy, expressive and receptive language. They can work with students who are having difficulties with social communication, and they also can work with students who have a different way of communicating. So they can work with deaf students who are signing, or they can work with a non-oral student on the spectrum who uses augmentative communication, or maybe a student that has a muscular disorder to where they can't speak but they can use a computer and type or touch on the screen. So who do speech language pathologists work with? Well, they work with a variety of different students, not just those that have speech and language disorders. They might work with stroke patients. They might work with students that have had a traumatic brain injury. They work with deaf and hard of hearing students. They work with students on the autism spectrum, like if they're having trouble with social communication, or maybe oral communication and they're using augmentative communication instead. And they also work with students that have progressive neurological disorders. So if you as a parent or as a teacher are having difficulty either understanding a child or with different aspects of communication, then that's who you want to communicate with, is the speech language pathologist. And you know, if they work there at the school, that's fantastic. You can call them up and have them come and observe in your classroom, or give you ideas or suggestions and ways that you can communicate with your student better so that they understand what's going on in your classroom. So I hope that was helpful. If it was, please like, share, and subscribe, and I'll see you later. Bye!